All right, did you want to try the recorder before we say goodbye? You want to play the recorder?
Yeah.
Where did mine go? Beautiful.
That was beautiful. Did you like that?
Oh yeah.
That was really cool. I was trying to think maybe we could put a name to that. That was such a beautiful piece that you made up. It's beautiful.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Disastershock Arts and Recovery Reporter's Notebook. My name is Dr. Reggie Matthew. I welcome our audience to attend this third in the series of our Arts and Recovery Reporter's Notebook. And this session is focused on reclaiming inner narratives through music. First, I'm going to introduce the Disastershock community. Then I'm going to define the frame of our interview. Then I will be introducing our esteemed guest. The Disastershock Global Response Team is an international humanitarian relief organization. dedicated to providing psychological first aid to children and families affected by disaster-related stress. We are an interdisciplinary team. Our materials have been translated to over 20 languages. The Disastershock Global Response Team is a special interest group of the Oxford Symposium in School-Based Family Counseling, which is sponsored by the Institute for School-Based Family Center. I'm Dr. Reggie Matthew. I'm an Expressive Arts Advocate and educator. I am a member of the Disastershock Arts and Recovery team. The Reporter's Notebook is an interview series exploring the voices of innovative expressive arts advocates speaking to the power of the arts in healing and integrating the mind, body, spirit in trauma recovery, and the restorative impact of community-based practices. Dr. Turry, I'd first like to explain the context of the expressive arts before we begin. The expressive arts is the practice of cultivating personal inner artistry as a resource through expressive approaches, dance, music, writing, drama, and art, a tool of intermodal experiential problem solving for self-expansion and personal growth. What we want the audience to know is that inner artistry is not only for performance. Inner artistry is a sensibility we can bring to daily life. Intermodal processing, the capacity to move between imagery, story, movement, and music, is a whole brain approach, offering us to engage with all parts of ourselves, a multi-sensory path which can support our inner journey to metabolize the complexity of our lives, reimagine new possibilities, and open pathways to hope. I am honored to introduce today Dr. Alan Turry, the Managing Director of the Nordoff-Robbins Center for Music Therapy at New York University. Dr. Turry is recognized nationally and internationally as a leader in music therapy clinical technique. He is recognized for his pioneering research efforts in studying the improvisational process. These include the success of incorporating contemporary music styles into the resources for creative music therapy, his use of improvisation and improvised songs in group music therapy, as well as the pioneering work with self-referred adults integrating psychotherapy and community therapy practice. He has taught and presented throughout the world, in Asia, in Europe. He is a visiting instructor at the Nordoff-Robbins Center in London, a visiting professor at Lesley University in Boston, Lisbon, Portugal, and Japan. He led the development of the Nordoff-Robbins supervision programs in Denmark, Greece, Poland, Ireland, and Italy. He was also the keynote speaker at the 8th World Congress in Music Therapy in Hamburg. He provides supervision to music therapy therapists throughout the world, including Greece, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Beijing. Welcome, Dr. Turry. It's such an honor to have you here today.
I am absolutely honored to be here. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and our exploration, and look forward to learning from what we do together.
Thank you, Dr. Turry. So Alan, let's begin with the understanding what is the Nordoff-Robbins method of music therapy. Can you explain what is this form of music therapy to our global audience? And also, we know that this method is now global and worldwide, and how has it translated across cultures?
Well, let's start with the name Nordoff-Robbins. Paul Nordoff was a brilliant composer, improviser, kind of a peer of Leonard Bernstein, that kind of musician who could pull out any classical piece or a portion of a classical piece and play it from memory, was a real student, a real seeker. And when he saw someone trying to help a young girl develop speech with music, he had an epiphany. This is what all musicians should be doing next. This is the next development of what music can be for people. And he left his tenured position at Bard College, which is a pretty significant event, and went around studying what music therapy was around the world and developing a way of how to help people with music. And he met Clive Robbins, the Nordoff-Robbins, Clive Robbins part of the equation. Clive was a genius in his own right. He worked with what we would call in a special education setting today. He met Paul Nordoff, and the two of them hit it off right away, because Clive was looking for an artistic way of trying to help people with challenges, mostly children. The two of them mostly work with children. And they worked together from 1959 to 1974. That was the first generation, and they really pioneered what we call a music-centered approach, and improvising in a compositional form to invite the potentials of a person to manifest in musical engagement. And one of the main ideas here, and I think it's something that you embrace in listening to you talk about what you're doing and what we're doing as creative arts therapists, everyone has creativity. Everyone has musicality. It's not, oh, the musicians are up on the stage performing. No, we all have the ability to be moved by music, to develop in music, to bring out our potentials that might be lying dormant within us in music. And so from their work, others brought this approach to adults with various challenges. It is not population specific. Many people associate it with children, autistic children, but it is now practiced around the world with anyone who's seeking to discover what music making can do for them.
And I'd like to hear more about Paul, Clive, and Carol, the founders of the approach. They sound like magical people. I know that Paul was a pianist, composer. Clive was skillful in improvisation, and Carol trained with them.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a thought that I could illustrate something with music, because first of all, Paul Nordoff was a genius. He could do so many different things with music, and he was a kind of neo-romantic composer, and he really felt that there were particular forces. With each interval, there was a different kind of experience and a subtle nuance in every change that he would make in music. And he really brought that into his experiences with clients and learned from the clients. And one of his first moments in therapy was with a boy who was very, very difficult to reach. His name was Johnny. And Paul Nordoff was told, well, go in and play for him. And he said, well, what do I play? This is his first session. And he was told by his supervisor, Hep Goiter, who was also a very brilliant anthroposophist, who said, listen, go in and play and let's see what happens. And this is a boy who people heard kind of making sounds that sounded like crying in his room at night, but when they would go in, flat affect, we would diagnose him with autism today, very uninterested in relating to people. And so Paul Nordoff went in and started playing music with him, matching his tempo when he walked around the room. So the boy is moving around, and Paul's playing with him. The boy stops, and Paul stops. The boy moves again, Paul moves again, starts playing with him again. And this kind of matching, this kind of engagement to a tune, we know now in the years 2022 about what that means about nonverbal communication and feeling that sense of connection and rapport. We know it from mother-infant interaction. He was discovering this, in the seat of his pants, really, and really giving the child agency, where he felt, wait, I have something to do with this music. I'm interested in this. And Paul Nordoff, who was playing in what we might call a kind of major pentatonic, or a pentatonic that comes more of the origins from China, he would take these tones, and when he felt, oh, this boy is listening, what if I changed just two notes? Instead of playing this 5-note pentatonic, still play 5 notes, but now I'm going to bring in dissonance. Now I'm going to bring in tones of tension. So now he's kind of exploring something with more pull, more emotional pull to it. Once he knew that the boy was listening, he made this change. Again, matching the intensity of how the boy was moving, picking up on his nonverbal gestures.
Mm-hmm.
And this linked it. The boy was moved by it. The boy started to cry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this was a big discovery. Eventually, he went back to the major pentatonic. He ended the session with a diatonic music. But the point was that he had reached this child that was so difficult to reach.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a kind of starting off point to thinking about that tones matter,
Mm-hmm.
that the subtleties of music matter, and how we are playing with the person matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of lifted him off into a whole exploration and discovery of music from around the world, people who study in this approach, which is, I should say, an advanced music therapy approach here in the United States. So after you've become a music therapist, if you really want to work to learn how to improvise in a compositional form, and I should say this also about this approach, which is very important to say, every one of these sessions that they did, and they were really the first ones to do this systematically, were recorded and then studied before the next session.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a very important aspect of balancing this creative, spontaneous, intuitive way of engaging with music with scientific study. Let's write down what happened. How loud was that? How much time did I wait before the child responded? What am I going to plan the next time? How am I going to use what I've learned from this session into the next session? So it is goal-oriented. It is something that is evidence-based. As you discover with your client the meaning of the music. And he and Clive Robbins worked together. Clive was often assisting if a child needed help physically, if a child needed help to focus, he would be on the floor and really knowing when to time, okay, now I'll give him the mallet. Now's the time where I can bring him over to the piano. So there's a lot of teamwork and working together. They really developed an approach where it was a team. Now, Carol, so I should say Paul Nordoff lived until 1974. And Carol became a student of Paul and Clive's. And Carol and Clive did some fantastic work with the hearing impaired. And Carol had her own approach that was unique to her, but a real student of the approach, a real student of Paul and Clive's. And I should say, I think this is one of the only approaches in music therapy where you're really listening to sessions, and it's a real tradition that you're learning from what you're hearing and how the music is used. And so case studies, original case studies of Paul and Clive's are used in the training. So Clive and Carol then became the master trainers here in the United States. They became part of training at New York University, where Barbara Hesser, who was for many, many years the head of the training program, the graduate music therapy program here at NYU, which is where we are housed, the Nordoff-Robbins Center is housed. They ran the Nordoff-Robbins Center here for many, many years in the training. And Carol passed away in 1997. Beautiful voice, beautiful work that she did. I think she had a special affinity for children with some physical challenges. And Clive passed away in 2011. And again, a genius in talking about the creative process. When you would hear him lecture, by the end of the lecture, not only did you believe in the approach, you felt like, I can do this. I am a creative person. So they were both very inspirational. All three of them were tremendous pioneers in the field of music therapy.
See, what you just described to me with playing some of those notes and tones brings me to my next question about the vastness of the musical vocabulary. So each time I attend a musical performance, I'm always awed by the soul-piercing effect of music on an audience. Whether it be jazz, blues, gospel, rock, or classical, I witness how music moves the listener, spurs relief, joy, play, and escape into imagination. My beloved music mentor in music therapy, my own music therapist who's since passed on, would always say to me, and this is a common phrase in music therapy, that music is the sound of feelings. But she would go deeper. She said music is the sound of emotional intricacies. Can you talk a little bit about the vastness of the musical vocabulary and how it can capture exquisite nuance in a way that we can't verbalize?
I don't think I could give justice with words what music can do. I've actually been told that English is my second language and music is my first language, because from a very early age, I've been improvising, and my mother used to encourage me to, if I had feelings that I wasn't sure of, go play the piano. She was that kind of very progressive kind of person. Music is there's a spiritual dimension. And so oftentimes in music therapy, we work hard to be scientific, and we work hard to be evidence-based, and we have a plan, and we evaluate, we assess, we intervene, we then evaluate how is our intervention. We want to be an established health intervention, and we are. It's been that way since 1950. But we cannot bracket out the spiritual essence of what music is. And I know that one of the things that you asked me about is, how do I nurture myself? What do I do for myself when I'm, working with lots of very difficult, challenging experiences that people have? And it's always coming back to my own engagement in music and processing difficult feelings through music. Or one of the things that Paul Nordoff said is that music is as big as our feeling life. It can capture the deep profoundness of our feelings and more superficial things. And so there's a definition that I really like. We came up, we were looking for different definitions of music, and these people who studied languages around the world, they came up with this definition of music, that music is creative play with sound. It arises when sound meets human imagination. So that's how big it is. That's how big it is. And, you can play the same thing in a very different way, Right? So there's so much possibility that it feels infinite. You never, if you allow yourself to kind of discover with the person you're working with as a therapist, you're always ready to learn new things about music and about people and what music making can do.
It is infinite: tone, cadence, pitch, pacing. It's just limitless in its expression, limitless in its pacing. I'm thinking about the nuanced sound of an oboe versus a percussion drum and the vastness of it. So the center at Nordoff-Robbins in New York is brimming with instruments. How do you know what type of musical palette to offer to participants?
Good question. And what I would say, and I want to say this about all the things we've been talking about. So, we study different scales from different parts of the world. out. You and I may have a certain response to these different kinds of musics, but it's not prescriptive. You can't assume, well, everybody who hears this is going to feel this kind of swing. So a big part of what we do is discover the meaning and experience with the clients in session. So our assessments are about, hey, is this a person who responds more to high register or timbre that is low, or is this a rhythm person? Is this a tonal person? We're listening for, hey, that sound, that vocal sound was in the tonality of the music. What is their vocal range? So we are assessing, and we have, of course, a body of experience of 40 years of seeing sessions and studying sessions, that we try out things. One mallet, two mallets, using your hands, sitting at the piano, trying the wind chimes, trying a tongue drum. So we're really exploring rather than prescribing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we come up with what can be meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ideas is that being able to share in a pulse, in what we call a basic beat together,
Mm-hmm.
is a profound way of connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And it is also a way of organizing your being. You organizing your beating when you organize your beating, you're organizing your being,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now we know from quantitative studies that when somebody is capable of organizing their beating and sharing it with another person and showing flexibility in their tempo, their social reciprocity increases.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these are things that Paul Nordoff and Clive Robbins were doing intuitively, and now more and more our studies are showing this, and we're doing a lot of real measurement of what we think is the key to music therapy, which is how engaged is the person.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let this.
I want to go back to what you said earlier, that everyone has an innate musicality.
Yes.
That it's innate to each person, that there is that what's called expressive range, what we'd say in the expressive arts.
Absolutely. So Paul Nordoff and Clive Robbins called it the music child. They were working with children. Sometimes people get confused, but what we tend to call it now is core musicality. So there's timing in our gestures.
Mm-hmm.
There's rhythm in how we move our bodies, and I know we were talking about this earlier. The connection between music and movement is so important and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So we connect to our bodies through connecting to our music and our expression. So it's not about learning a skill of I am now know how to play the piano, but naturally, how can we bring out our creative musicality, our expressive musicality?
Mm-hmm. Great. And the next question, this leads us to my beloved music therapist, Connie Leidy at the Rock Conservatory of Music. When I would work with her, she would always describe music as, I want to zoom out for a minute, as music as a force in the world. Music is in every part of the life cycle, at losses, memorials. You hear phrases of like, that was the soundtrack of a generation. This is my life song. Also, the idea that songs are alive and that they live across time and they denote time, place, and identity. Music also serves many psychological functions. It can be an emotional container. It can be that mirror, providing both maternal and paternal functions. And lastly, also a profound witness to our life. I'm thinking of the music that was chosen for the 9/11 memorial when the museum was erected. And the choice of music was There Is a Place for Us from West Side Story. And it just, can you say something about the profound functions that music serves across the lifespan? A container, a mirror, the sound of the mother.
beautiful about that is the phrase reaches out and then comes in. There's this flow in and out. So much about music is tension and relaxation. Tension, and I can relax even more. More tension, I'm feeling my body more. And this is something that happens often in different kinds of music, you know. It's such a profound question, the idea that yes, music is containing. You know, we hear a lot of music that in lullabies, in register, simple, repetition makes something familiar, but it can also change. It can reach out. You know, it can take us to different places. When we're listening to music, we're not just listening to the note. We're anticipating what's going to happen next. And that's a part of why it's so powerful, because that expectation can be met or it can be not met, and oh, now something new is happening. And so I think when you're fully engaged in music, it's a way of feeling there are possibilities that you might not have realized before. You know, there's something about music that we can identify with, whether it's a melody that sounds familiar to us, or something that's stable in the pulse. There's something, oh, I know that deep within me. I have a heart and my heart beats, so I can relate, or my pulse moves, you know. So there's something about pulse and beating that feels familiar. This is right. I can move with this. And then other aspects of music that can say, something can be surprising here as well, or go deeper into a feeling that could be repressed. I forgot about that part of myself. I'm hearing music and I'm realizing I didn't let myself feel that for a long time. So we listen to music and we engage in music to kind of remember things about ourselves that maybe are too powerful to feel in everyday life, right? And I think that's why, you know, setting aside time, whether it's in music therapy or your own, you know, time for yourself, can be so important. And when you were talking about the different times and generations, I was thinking about during the pandemic, where we were seeing people going on rooftops to play and to be able to be heard and to make connections through music, how important music was and still is for people. How many people have gone online to connect to music and to connect to people through music, and looking for ways to find that feeling of a community and social connection. It's a ritual. Music is a ritual in so many different cultures, like you said, for the markers of our life.
The functions of music in the world is just so profound, as a bridge, a container, a mirror, a communicator. You know, it's truly a force in the world.
It is, and I don't want it to be seen as a panacea. You know, I don't want people to think, oh, they're just, you know, high and flighty. And, you know, I mean, people have done things with music like, let's capture those people by playing music, or get them out of the 7-Eleven by playing music. You know, I mean, your intention about, you know, how you use music, you know, and sometimes people can get stuck. This, actually, I want to say this. This can be very important why a music therapist and being in therapy can be, because sometimes people can stuck in a loop of feeling sad and listening to sad music and only feeling sad. And you can get caught in the kind of self-absorption of feeling resigned. So I just want to put that out there, that, you know, your intention and how, you know, sometimes it's very important to be guided and helped. So yeah,
that's really important, because it's about accessing our full color palette. You know, yes, that sadness or that particular note, but it's one note in a palette, and it's being able to experience the entire palette of our inner life.
so important, because that's one of the great things about music. Thank you for saying that, that we can be feeling sadness and hope at the same time, because music is a blend. Music is not just happy or sad. It's a blend of emotions that we can really resonate with. So even as somebody might, be crying and feeling tears, they're also feeling hope and creative. I've had that experience with many of my participants, my partners, my collaborators, I should say. It's a very, very powerful thing to fully engage in music.
Yeah, that's a really important point, that it gives us access to the full musicality of our inner life. It helps us to encounter that sadness, but with all the colors on the table. Yeah. Yes, but that, on this idea of complexity, this complex container that music is, that it's vast, it's broad. It brings me now to the world of music and recovery and rehabilitation. I think Alan, I'm a person with a neuromuscular disability. And the one thing I often try to rephrase when I'm lecturing about the expressive arts is the idea of the intermodal invitation, that entry point doesn't equal end point. And that my most important question is, how does someone enter their world? And what we know is that music has been applied widely, even at the center in aphasia rehabilitation. I've done work on telling stories about music and dance and movement with the Parkinson's community. Music helps foster language. I'm thinking of the story of Senator Gabby Gifford, who recovered from a brain injury, and music therapy helped her with aphasia. I heard a quote from Professor Edwin Walden at the University of Pacific in California, and he said something interesting, that music offers almost a cerebral bypass, that when there's these damaged areas of the brain, we then can still fully access our full experience of ourselves through music. So while medical interventions could be corrective, musical interventions are expansive, that whatever it is that you're facing, it allows you to live in your body, find joy and self-cohesion in the moment. So could you say something about that? Because that was many of the cases that you've worked with.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, we know a little bit more about the brain and how it functions, a little bit more. And we know that when someone is engaged in music, it lights up more parts of the brain than anything else. So yes, we can get a lot of a bypass. I like that word. I would say new neural connections can happen with music. So we definitely know that. We know that from studies, and we know it from case material. We've seen that happen. Very interesting. I'm thinking about many of our clients who are challenged physically love the feeling of singing and singing and singing and singing higher, and that feeling of transcending. I think we all have it, neurotypical, neurodiverse, that feeling of transcending our body. And so that sense of being able to soar in music, to soar through expressive musicality, is often one of the most powerful transitions for somebody to feel like, I still am a full person. I still have this part of me that can allow me to flow and move. And actually, we have done studies where it actually has an effect on people's limbs that are challenged. We've done some collaboration with NYU Langone Medical Center, where we combined occupational therapy and music therapy. People who were affected on one side, one limb was severely damaged, very limited movement, through creative music making. Again, this idea, I love what you're saying. It's not corrective, it's expansive. We're discovering what music making can do, rather than I'm targeting a symptom. I'm targeting, oh, you can't do that, let's work on this. No, it's how can we engage in music making in a natural, holistic way, and what can be led, where does that invite us to go? And we have seen that besides the very important social and emotional effects. Hey, I don't feel as isolated. I'm taking more risks now. I'm going on the train. I haven't done that. So not only that, but actually, you know what? I'm more aware of parts of me that have been very, very difficult for me to remember. There's more of use of the arm that was affected by the damage. But it's not because we're saying we're going to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we're saying let's engage in music and see where we can go from here.
Thank you. So this brings me to Emily's session, the session that we introduced our audience to before we began speaking.
Right.
And I want to now explore this magical work of improvisation. In that video, I saw an invitation, then a mirroring, then engaging in play, then improvisation, and then a conversation. Can you say a little bit about Emily and the context of that session?
Thank you for asking me about that and for sharing this. I love working with Emily, and I learn from her. She's somebody who has a great deal of challenge being able to speak. She's very musical. She's fun-loving. She's got a strong personality, and during the pandemic, you saw that this was a remote session. All of her services, all of the things that she was involved in, closed down. And so one of the only things that she could do was to participate in music therapy. So here's a young woman who has a lot of difficulty expressing herself with words. It's really, really hard for her. She's frustrated by it. The invitation to engage in something that's flowing is coming from both of us. It's really, in every moment, we're trying to create a sense of mutuality and collaboration. So we're affectively attuning to how she's doing it. I'm trying to get a sense of what is her phrasing? How is she breathing? Where is she putting the emphasis and accent? And how can I create something that has her feel like we're in an ensemble together? This is something we're doing together. And what's very, very subtle but beautiful is the way Jackie, the co-therapist, remember we do work in teams, even remotely, holds the flute to say, yes, you're playing the flute, but it's you. She doesn't play, but she's ready, and she's kind of modeling the fact that she's kind of saying, go ahead, inviting more. And so as you see the beginning, you can say, wow, she's really engaged in her playing. It's hard to know how much she's listening of what I'm doing with her. And so I love that you noticed that there was a point where her level of engagement was clearly at a higher level. That it wasn't just that she was actively in music and actively expressing herself, but now she was interacting in a playful way, and in a way that we had a musical conversation, and in a spontaneous, flowing way that she cannot do or has not done up to this point with language.
Well, I see that it was a delicate balance between mirroring, silence, presence, and the dance between those three elements with sound.
Yes, so a lot of the art of this is in the timing, right? And noticing the subtle changes, and maybe hearing something a little bit and kind of invite, you know what, you could do that even more. So you want to affectively attune, right? You want to really be together and have that feeling of connection. And once, wait, yes, we're listening, we're sharing. Now, how can we invite the next step in development? So it's not only mirroring and containing, but it's also inviting a next step, inviting the potential to come out, the potential that's there to come out. And so I love that you picked that excerpt. It's really a beautiful one, that really illustrates the importance of inviting engagement. And that's something that we are working on very hard to measure. It's something that we do clinically, but we're also trying to establish a way of knowing how engaged is somebody in music therapy, because that's the key to music therapy. That is really the key to a successful course. And so many people know about Paul Nordoff and Clive Robbins because they've heard excerpts, in, certainly in music therapy and on the web, and music therapists who are Nordoff-Robbins trained. We know about the work. It's very powerful to listen to. What people don't know as much is that they establish scales to try to measure improvement, development in music therapy. And we've built on those scales, and we are actually on the cusp of publishing a scale that we call, that grows out of the Nordoff-Robbins scales, called the Music Engagement Scale, that is now showing that it can have scientific, quantitative research validity.
Wow.
And so we're really excited about this. We've been doing training with people, not just people in music therapy, but other applied psychology and other fields, where they can watch a session and they can accurately measure how engaged is this person, because that's the key to any kind of music therapy. And I know you had asked me a question about receptive musicality and receptive music therapy as opposed to as active music therapy. And I wanted to say this to start. Listening is an action. Listening is not passive. So engaging by listening can be just as powerful. And you can be active by how you're moving your body. It doesn't have to be, you have to be playing an instrument. And we actually measure how somebody is moving in time to the music. Their gestures can be musical. Their sounds that they're making can be musical. So it doesn't have to be they're playing an instrument.
The other thing, also the shift of a beat internally, if there's physical impairments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was going to say, one of the very powerful approaches in music therapy is called guided imagery in music, where a trained therapist is going to engage with you and decide, based on what is coming up, this is the music we're going to listen to, and asking questions. And the person is not actively playing an instrument, but they're actively listening and living in the musical experience.
Wow, that's important to me because, in my world, in the world of medical rehabilitation, there are people who have the physical ability to engage with music making, but others don't. But I hear you saying that whether it's active or receptive, I love what you said, that listening in itself is an active way to participate in music therapy.
Absolutely.
I'm also really struck by what you said, that you're measuring the act and the journey of becoming present in the musical space. The delicate, courageous act of being present and more embodied with the experience of engaging in music therapy with a therapist.
I love the way you said that. That's beautiful. Yes. Yes. Being present, bringing your full self in, being authentic with how engaged you can be in the moment.
The next lasting lesson that I learned at the Rockland Center for Music Therapy is that whether you're engaging in music making or not, music also serves as metaphor. Inner musicality can serve you to face the challenges of each day. Percussion can teach you about pacing. Listening to delicate music can teach you about nuance. Can you say something about that, the metaphorical benefits of music as a guide, as a template for life?
We have within us musical ways of thinking, the timing of how we perceive things, the intensity of how we engage in things other than music. And these are all musical things. So when we are engaged in music making and we are able to slow down and live in a moment that has more time. These things spread into other parts of our life. Hey, you know what? I've had that experience of being slower and more reflective and thoughtful in music. I can do that now. That's a part of me. So all of these experiences, to assert oneself by playing strongly on a downbeat, can also mean I'm going to say what I want to say right now in this room. So we see that all the time, that these musical experiences really are, in a way, more than metaphors. They're manifesting and are actually spreading to other parts of people's lives.
So then it becomes a resource, an inner reference of how to be in the world.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Alan, next I would like to go to the compelling story of Maria Logis. This is a person who was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And at this time of great adversity, she decided to pursue music therapy. And in your work with her, you worked with a vast array of musical tools: composition, lyric analysis, songwriting, music making, singing, vocalization. And she said, quoted on her site, she's since passed on, that music made it possible for me to go into my hunger, my fear, and my anguish. I have taken a journey deep into my underworld, and I have come back changed. I was so affected by those words, because it really captured to me the essence of what music therapy offers. So I thought what we would do for a few minutes is to watch a performance that I wanted to share with the audience, called What's Emerging. That's okay?
Oh, please.
The song comes from a place deep inside. The song comes from a place deep inside. It It rises, it caresses my heart, it kisses my eyes, it blows through my mouth. The song rises, rises from a place deep, deep inside. The song caresses my heart. The song kisses my eyes. The song blows through my mouth. a song, a song, my song.
I have to pause for a moment. So I think there's a few things I wanted to ask about that. First, we're in the field at a moment in our field where there's a lot that's framed in terms of the body, Besser van der Kolk's work in the field of traumatology. And the first thing that really captivated me about that performance is she says the song comes from deep within inside. So you see a full mind-body connection and mind-body engagement. And this is someone who is, facing a very difficult process in her body. But I was so affected by just the full integration of the mind and the body, being able to live in her body, inhabit her body. So I want to know if you had a thought about that.
Well, first I want to say how inspiring it was to work with Maria. I guess now I can kind of sit back and kind of let that in even more. What an inspiration, and inspiration to so many people. I just want to say that. You were able to get that from the website. She has a lot of examples of her songs, which grew out of music therapy. So, I just feel kind of humble and grateful that I had the opportunity to partner with her in this exploration. Yes, oftentimes what happened for Maria in music therapy, I think is what happens for a lot of people, is unfreezing parts of the body by engaging in musical experience. And she would find ways. She actually described herself as being frozen like a zombie when she was diagnosed. Mm-hmm. Now, that excerpt that you just played, you saw it came up, it said 2016. We actually started working together in 1994. She was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4, 1994. And she was someone who had been in psychotherapy, someone who studied counseling, very psychologically minded. And what came to her was not to go into psychotherapy, but somehow to explore this little voice in her head about singing. She didn't even know about music therapy. And what began was an enormous journey that, 1994. And I believe we finally stopped working together maybe a month or two before she passed in 2019. So she actually lived to be 82, 83 years old when it was not so clear that that was going to happen. And what she remembers was, after grappling with this diagnosis, which she was not feeling anything except walking around frozen like a zombie, was exploring instruments of everything was improvised in the beginning, laughing for the first time since the diagnosis. And so she thought, well, maybe I should come back, And it was all improvisation, which then her feelings about treatment, her feelings about the doctors, her feeling of trying to purge herself of this illness that was inside her, going deep to try to, sounds of disgust and how it was becoming musically expressive. And she would then lead into singing melodies, which she described as, I'm no longer feeling oppressed in these moments. I'm no longer feeling like a cancer patient in these moments. I'm feeling alive in these moments. I'm not letting the cancer squelch me down. And she was improvising her words, and not just about the cancer, but about lifelong issues, And when people would ask her, how are you doing with this terrible diagnosis? She would say, you want to know how I'm doing? Listen to this. And she would actually play excerpts from sessions. It's one of the things we decided early on, that we thought it would be helpful for her to have a recording of what she was doing. Mm-hmm. And one person said, you know what? These are songs. You should learn these as songs and perform them. And as a statement to say, you're not going to let the cancer overwhelm you, and shut you down. And she was tentative about it. She came to me, and, at this point, we were having music therapy traditionally inside a room that had a piano and instruments and recording, as we do in the Nordoff-Robbins approach. And I said, let's try it and let's reflect on how it helps you with your process. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sorry, go ahead.
You said a magic word for me. We've talked about this before, the idea of inner aliveness. And that's what people are seeking, the experience of being alive, the experience of being embodied. Yeah. And it seems like her process was a process of a beautiful witness of that.
Absolutely. She sings about it, that she would become alive and start by singing. She feels dead to her own heart, but then all of a sudden she's singing, and now the experience is different. She sang about it being better than chocolate. She had issues about eating and finding a way to feel alive. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that happens for all of us, when we feel engaged in music. I mean, it's so important, especially now with everything that's going on in the world, politically, socially.
I titled this question initially as Reimagining Inner Narratives Through Music, but the word, this is a phrase that I learned from a colleague recently. It's also a new imagining of your inner narrative. So it's not just a reimagining. It sounds like it was also a new imagining for her.
She was, if you asked her in 1994, a successful businesswoman, feminist, worked for Con Edison, was manager of the year, was leading groups of men, and this is what she did. She was an organizer. She was a doer of complex things. It was her sister, who was an architect, who was a teacher, who did beautiful art. She was the artist, and Maria saw herself as the rational, organized person. As we continued to work together, and as she shared more of her process with friends, and as she shared learning these as songs and becoming more involved in music, and the beautiful musician you saw, John Coward, playing with her, writing plays about her experience in music therapy, her whole image of herself changed into that of a creative artist. Mm-hmm. And that was a tremendous shift for her. Mm-hmm. Now, look, she still had bouts of things. I mean, but they were less. Right? Because she had this new imagining of herself and this new aspects of herself that she could count on. Mm-hmm. I would invite people. I mean, it's a beautiful website, really dedicated to her, marialogis.com, and also, you talked about the analysis was really me looking at how is this happening. Mm-hmm. My entire doctoral dissertation was what's happening in the music. Mm-hmm. What am I doing to invite? What is she doing? How is this? What's the meaning of this mode and that mode? And these are things that I would know naturally in the clinical process, but really going back and delving deeply into the musical process, it was an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, it was an incredible example. Both videos that we showed about this improvisational path that you've really created and that you've have been the architect of. When I think of improvisation, I think of these masters musicians at the Lincoln Center for Jazz. And to know that improvisation is the path the intricacy and the intimacy of it and the trust, step by step, because in improvisation, each moment is new.
Yes, and it's really bringing you into the here and now. Now. And that's where things happen. That's where new possibilities come into play. That's where feelings come out that might have been defended against. That's where new realizations come. So again, it's music. I just feel so lucky to have this as we were saying earlier, this infinite possibility of what music can do. There's always something that hasn't been said before musically. So there's always this sense of wonder of what can come from this moment.
Yeah, and in improvisation, like as you demonstrated to us earlier, anything could be improvised in a limitless landscape of sound and instrumentation and pacing. So it is a landscape of hope.
I like that. Improvisation is a landscape of hope. I like that.
So Alan, what is the legacy of the Nordoff-Robbins therapeutic approach to music?
I like what we just said. Well, you can bring your full self into music, and this is an aspect of yourself that taps into thinking, feeling, spiritual dimension, soul, that all aspects of music are important in what we'll call music therapy. That it's not, let's make this a, what did you call it, a corrective intervention, but let's bring a fullness of humanity and what we love about music into these therapeutic experiences. That's what I think the legacy of Nordoff-Robbins is.
Thank you. And Alan, I also want to say something about your legacy, because I've known you and your work for a while, that you've all offered your vast inner musicality with tenderness, exquisite commitment to the process, and with a capacity for boundless play. You've been such an example to me, and I know to so many of us in the field, and I wanted to thank you.
Thank you. I feel this is such a gift that you have given me. So thank you, and I'm so moved by your work, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
So Alan, as an end note to our interview today, we will be having slides after this interview, which will let our global audience know about the Nordoff-Robbins Center and that there are many ways to engage with your community. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you so much for allowing us to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Alan. It was an honor to be with you, and I wish you limitless musical discoveries in your journey.
Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful wish, and I wish it right back to you.
All right. Thank you, Alan.